Good morning, Councilmember Allen and members of the council. My name is Andrea Powell, and I am the founder and executive director of Fair Girls. I want to bring to your attention today the very real positive impact the Trafficking Survivors Relief Amendment Act of 2017 could have in the lives of survivors of human trafficking whose exploitation took place in the District of Columbia. Fair Girls is headquartered in Washington, D.C. and established in 2004. We serve young women and girls who are survivors of all forms of human trafficking. Fair Girls also operates the first and currently only transitional housing program for young women survivors of human trafficking in the District of Columbia. Over 100 young women survivors of human trafficking have resided in what we call the Vita Home. Fair Girls also co-chairs the training and policy subcommittees of the D.C. Anti-Trafficking Task Force, where we have been an active member since 2006. I'd also like to contextualize the problem of human trafficking. Washington, D.C. has a particularly acute human trafficking issue. It is estimated that roughly 500 individuals seek services due to their victimization just of sex trafficking each year. The FBI identifies D.C. as one of the top 14 cities in the United States where commercial sexual exploitation takes place. The National Human Trafficking Resource Center notes that because of D.C.'s location along major highways and thoroughfares and Baltimore's proximity, D.C. has a significant part of the East Coast sex trafficking circuits. NHRTC also states that phone calls placed for help were made at a rate that was 16th highest in the nation, despite the population of D.C. being far lower than the average U.S. state. Those are alarming statistics, particularly since the actual number of survivors in D.C. is likely much higher. Fear of coercion, threats of violence, trauma bonds, and the psychological torment of human trafficking survivors means it often takes years to self-identify, years of care, counseling, recovery, and safety. In the 12 years, Fair Girls has served more than 1,000 young women and girls who have survived human trafficking or commercial sexual exploitation. Approximately 90% of the girls we serve are girls of color. 70% were in the child welfare system. 10% identify as LGBTQ. 10% are immigrants. 74% have experienced domestic violence, and 80% have experienced homelessness before they were trafficked. They suffer debilitating bouts of post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and suicidal thoughts at exponential rates. Sadly, in 2015 and 2016, approximately half of the young women we serve had experienced at least one arrest or conviction prior to getting the help they need to thrive. Today, I will share with you what happens when a human trafficking victim is treated like a criminal and not a victim. In 2009, a Fair Girls client, CL, was a victim of sex trafficking in the District of Columbia starting at the age of 5. At 19, she escaped her trafficking situation but was left with a prostitution conviction. In addition to the shame she felt, CL was repeatedly turned away from jobs because of her criminal record, ultimately meaning she stopped applying at all. The therapy and support she received at Fair Girls helped her regain her sense of self-worth, but remaining jobless led her to experience additional homelessness and vulnerability inside city shelters. In 2015, KS, an 18-year-old newly emancipated foster child who was trafficked from another state, was arrested on charges of prostitution in 2 different states where she was trafficked. While her trafficker continued to threaten her from jail, she struggled to overcome her past. Her dream of becoming a teacher was also at risk. Luckily, KS lived in Fair Girls Vita Home, where she received the counseling and housing she desperately needed. Now she is a thriving college student, but legitimately fears the stigma of her past may still prohibit her from the job of her dreams that she has worked so tirelessly for. Finally, in 2014, KK, a 13-year-old girl abused by her mother and frequently homeless throughout her youth, was lured by a female trafficker who sold her for 5 years. KK was arrested as a minor and repeatedly placed in the juvenile detention facility. Finally, at 18, she was arrested for prostitution. At a local youth shelter, Covenant House, she was referred to Fair Girls for support. We worked tirelessly to offer KK the counseling and job training and safe space she needed. Her arrest cost her a scholarship to the university of her dreams. She's now gainfully employed and safely housed, but sadly she gave up on that dream of college. The Trafficking Survivors Relief Amendment Act would right an injustice played out here in the nation's capital against the most vulnerable victims of crime. These survivors deserve to have the chance to seek the redress that would ensure that they can attend college, gain access to affordable housing, and find the sustaining employment and put the abuse behind them. I am a proud citizen of the District of Columbia. As someone who works with these survivors every day, I truly believe this legislation is in the best interest of survivors of human trafficking, of which there are many in the District of Columbia. In closing, thank you for your time and consideration, and I look forward to hearing your deliberations for this truly vital bill in combating modern-day slavery.
Thank you very much. Ms. Maya?